because I know that this is John and Nicole. Nicole is, I think, going to try to join us, but her son's preschool is celebrating his birthday today. So if she is able to, then the miracles of technology will have benefited us all. But this is where our call will be placed once it has been completed. So you can always return here to check it out. Then what you can do too is follow along. I put a link to this presentation in the chat so that you can for yourselves for all eternity. That would be fantastic for you. I mean, I've got access to it all the time. So here's a quick rundown of what we're looking at today. We are running up against the end of the year, so I don't know if a lot of you noticed, but on the title slide, it said November hyphen December, which means that we will not be meeting in December because who wants to meet on the last Thursday of December? If you guys want to meet on the last Thursday of December, we can discuss doing that in person somewhere off the clock. However, we will probably not be rejoining for specific data privacy questions or in this communal form until after the new year. And I think that what we can do is prime ourselves with some of the things that we will be talking about come January. So that'll be cool. Just plant that seed. So Katie's going to talk to us. We're going to talk about advisory group conversation. For those of you that maybe aren't aware that if you are submitting a data privacy agreement to SDPC, we have a process. We actually started this in June. We'll go over that. We want to talk about this meeting and what it looks like and how it benefits you. And like it was suggested, like, is this something we could combine with some of the state's efforts? I know that their charge is a lot more broad than specifically just education. They deal with, police and courts and utilities and all sorts of different things. So we want to know what works for you. We did have our, as you can see in some of the topics that we can talk about in our open conversation on the bottom, we did have, our fall privacy training, and some of the feedback that we got was that, some folks are really wanting to go back to the basics and kind of really try to just understand what is FERPA, what does that mean? Because, a lot of people here are subject matter experts, and maybe that's not necessarily the case. Maybe you have ideas for what this can look like. And also one kind of a little addendum to this one as well. I'm interested if anybody has feedback or wants to provide feedback on their user experience when it comes to SDPC. I've been in some meetings lately where we are talking about the next iteration of what the actual website is going to look like. And in order for me to talk to them about the things that we want, I need to know what we want. So, what kind of things would make your lives easier? Would it be having it serve as some sort of hub where you log in and you say, I want to create an agreement with this place? And then it will then know what kind of agreement you're supposed to do. And then you sign when you're supposed to. And, that would be a place like some, a DocuSign place where that's where everything kind of happens. I don't know, ideas like that. I'm all for innovation, of course, and that's definitely where our mindset is in that space. So I'm going to be done going blah, 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 and I'm going to jump to our Katie corner. Oh, look, there's Katie. Surprise, Katie.
I love that. I have my own corner. Hi, everyone. It's always so fun to, in most cases, I'm not seeing your faces, but it's still really nice to see your names. I've said this before, but I really enjoy, my favorite part of my job is working with you guys in the districts and charters. So this is probably my best meeting all day. Well, hey, I am coming to you seeking volunteers. and I'm like a little bit torn because I would really like volunteers, but I'm also, what I'm going to explain to you is it would not be a small ask. So let me kind of explain to you what I have in mind, and then you guys can obviously decide if you want to participate or not. I'm going to describe to you what's upcoming the legislative session, and I might be telling you stuff that you already know, so bear with me. But if you're like me, before I started working at USPA, I did not fully appreciate this. So I'll tell you, assuming that some of you don't know. All right. So in the middle of January begins the Utah legislative session, and it lasts for 6 weeks. And obviously there's laws and bills, there are bills being put out there for all sorts of stuff, but a huge number of those bills are in relation to education, and specifically K-12 education. So here's the deal. When we at the Utah State Board of Education, when they pass, when someone, one of the senators or someone from the House of Representatives, when they put a bill out there, there are these like people who work for the legislature and they're like, oh my gosh, here's a bill. We need to know how this is going to impact people. And so they send a little request to our financial folks at USBE, and they're like, we need you to tell us what the fiscal impact of this bill would be if it passed. And then our team, like those guys and everyone else at USBE that is involved, we have only 24 hours to respond. So we're supposed to put together some kind of cost analysis of how this bill would affect USBE staff, but also how would it affect LEAs, which is like, so USBE staff is hard enough. You have to hurry and do the math of like, oh, well, this would require an extra person, and so it would cost this much. But then there's like extra levels of complication when it comes to us trying to assess what the burden of impact would be on you guys at the LEA level. And it kind of personally, like, it kind of bothers me that like we at USBE are trying to figure that out on your behalf, not because I'm like averse to the work, but because I really want your feedback. Like, I don't want to say, oh, this is no big deal, the LEAs will be unaffected, only to find out that it's going to be a huge deal for you guys. So it's really important to me that LEAs have the opportunity to weigh in. The downside is, like I mentioned, we have a 24-hour turnaround time. And it's also like more complicated than just like describing to me in words. Like I might say, hey, I'm looking, you know, I might send out an email to people who are willing to give feedback. And I might say, I'd love to get your feedback on this. And I might hear back from people who are like, Katie, this would be the worst. But then I have to somehow take that, this would be the worst, and turn it into a dollar figure, because that's what the legislature wants. They want a dollar figure. So what I am thinking is I would like to establish some kind of short list of people like you at the LEAs who, in the event that there's a bill that would affect you related to privacy, that I could just hurry and contact you and be like, listen, I have a really quick turnaround time. Can you please take an hour to read through this and tell me what kind of financial impact this would have on you, including like how many work hours would this cost you a year, that kind of thing. And it's not, and like they do like training for us at USBE on how to write these, they're called fiscal notes. They do like training for us on how to do it. Like, it's not super easy. So this is where it comes to this, like, this balance between like, the last thing I want to do is ask you guys to do more, but I also really don't want to like make decisions on your behalf without getting your input. So I'm bringing this to the group to offer as an opportunity. If you would like to be on my short list of people that I can reach out to in the coming months, it would look something like, hey, you guys, this bill just dropped. We need to know how this would impact LEAs. Please respond within 2 hours with feedback, something like that. It's like quite stressful. It's like a really quick turnaround time. So, and if you wanted to volunteer to be on the short list, I think the best thing to do would be that we could set up a meeting, maybe a 30-minute meeting or something, and I could kind of give those people a little bit of like training on how to provide me information that will be the most useful to give to the legislature. I will say the one thing that is, and I will also say, if I were in your shoes, if I was back working in a district and someone offered this opportunity to me, I would be like, forget about it. I have plenty to do. So there's no pressure, but some people are a little bit interested in policy. And then another thing that I'll point out that is perhaps like a little selling point is your participation could help like inform legislators about the cost of some of their decisions and could potentially like really help out. Like one thing that's been surprising to me about legislative session is that 1 or 2 people can have a whole lot of influence on a bill. So that's my spiel. If you have any interest in being on my short list over the next coming months, then I would reach out to you and ask you for feedback on bills. I'd love to have your help, but also no pressure. It's not a fun job unless you're interested in policy. How's that for some? You know what I would be bad at? Being a car salesman. I would be like, this car's kind of the worst, but I guess you could buy it if you want to. Does anyone have any questions about what I just described, or anyone want to share feelings about it?
Katie, how's this different from the advisory group that you were setting up?
Good question. And John, I don't want to steal your thunder, but can I kind of
Oh,
steal
I
your
was hoping
thunder?
for like a perfect segue. So please
Okay.
do it.
Okay. So let's talk about the advisory group. So the advisory group is intended to do a bunch of different things, including weigh in on USPA policy and like legislation. So this is in a future world, like maybe next year. Right now, like our advisory group has dwindled to like just 3 people. And so we need to replenish it, as John has mentioned to you before. And we haven't done that yet. So this year we're kind of like not fully staffed. So I would say, John, to answer your question, this group would sort of act as either a temporary replacement because we don't have that advisory group for me to reach out to. That's one answer. And then also it could potentially supplement that advisory group, because like I would love if I had like 10 people on my short list, and then on any given day, maybe only 5 people could respond, or maybe only 3. So I do see some value in having the advisory group will ultimately probably only have, I'm thinking like maybe 6 people from an LEA. There will be other advisory group people involved. So it might be nice to have more people than just the advisory group going forward to weigh in. But all of that aside, this year we really don't have anyone. We have 3 people, and really only like 2 of them are really like equipped to speak to the LEA experience on the ground. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And
Okay.
it's kind of a question. I mean, you brought it up. Okay, with all the other hats I wear, will I be able to really be useful to help?
Right.
But yeah, thank you for answering that question.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing is like, worst case scenario, you could, if you want to try it out and see like if it seems like an interesting experience for you, then you could say, yeah, Katie, I want to be on your short list this year, and then just never respond to me. Like the other thing I'll mention is that I'm specifically interested in people who can speak to legislation that relates to privacy laws, and maybe also like ed tech. Sometimes last year I was a little bit involved in like ed tech legislation more broadly. So it's not that you would get bombarded with requests about bills every day. It would be maybe like 3 to 6 times throughout the legislative session. So if you could respond to some but not others, that would be helpful. If you couldn't respond to any, that would be okay too. I totally understand. Yeah. Okay, great. So Alex is willing to participate. That's awesome. Alex, I will email you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyone else willing to be on my short list? John Hyatt, thank you. Thanks so much, you guys. Troy, is that Troy Lunt? Troy says probably.
Yes, that's me. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
Couldn't find my mute. So that's just, it's hard to speculate where, as we saw in November, what's coming. And so I'd like to say yes, but it may take a few weeks for me to kind of see where things are going to be.
Okay. All right. Well, so what I'll do, and if anyone else is interested, and again, you could just do like a trial run this year if you want to just see how it goes this year. But what I'll probably do is try to schedule something, a short something where I can just sort of give you training on what I need on my end. So it would basically be like a chain reaction. So I would reach out to you and be like, we're looking for feedback on this. You would give me some information, preferably in dollar amount figures, which that's what I would do the training on, is to help you turn man hours into, or work hours into dollar figures. You'd send that back to me, then I would compile it, and then I'd send it back to our financial people, and they would compile it, and then they send it back to the legislature. So it's a very like step-by-step process. All right. Well, thanks you guys. And Doug, thank you. I really appreciate it. If you, oh, Sue, that's Sue, right? S. Talmadge, that's Sue.
It is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And if you're even like remotely interested, I would say go ahead and volunteer, because there's no obligation to respond. And then
Put me on your
maybe,
list then.
what's that?
You can put me on your list then.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sue. I really appreciate that. All right, thanks you guys. And if anyone else decides they want to join the short list, feel free. Thanks, John, and thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to put your cartoon up without explicit consent right before. So, welcome to a post review world where we're just worried about getting contracts with vendors and hoping to make sure that everything that we said that we were using in the review is correct on our metadata dictionaries, and just trying to be good stewards of the data. So as a reminder, and just to kind of maybe preface some of the conversation regarding what can SDPC look like? What do we want in a resource and a tool? Like, what things do we have to have legally? What kind of things do we want to have for usability sake? I mean, a lot of it is that you are the end user in the way that our state is structured. In other states, the way that it is that the LEAs pay someone to do this on their behalf, which I don't know, maybe some of you'd rather do that, but that's just not how it's currently structured. But there are conversations about what we want it to look like, and we had a very good conversation yesterday with a group called Learn 21. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. They're a nonprofit out of Ohio. They are it looks like we're going to get into a phase of having some serious conversations with them as a partner in providing a space that will be the next iteration of SDPC, which means that usability and everything should be better. And then just to we have not sent out any of the review results yet. We are still getting submissions from folks. Our goal, I'm going to put this out there into the universe. Our goal is to have your review to you before the holiday break. So that is the goal for Nicole and I, is to turn that back around for you, and that everybody walks away into 2024 with nothing but green on their review report. So that's what we're looking for. So if you have any questions about doing that, we'll talk about that little piece in a moment. But the way that it's working currently is if you are adding a new agreement to your registry, no longer will it just post to the registry. What happens is now this is what my interface looks like, and then I would click on this, and then what we would see would be this, all of these ones that need to be reviewed. And so Nicole has been like, she mentioned this yesterday. She was like, I think I'm getting really into contracts. I don't know. There's just something about reading the fine details of all of these things. And so thanks to this process and to all of you, you have helped her unlock a new achievement on her life journey, which is, enjoying reading legalese. And a lot of that is due to a lot of the things that have been submitted have included a ton of new language on Exhibit H. And that's not something that I feel like we've been utilizing a ton in the past. And maybe you as users can help me fill in some of the gaps, but it feels like that this addendum, that vendors are using it a lot more. And so what has been happening is Nicole has been kind of looking at what the vendors are asking, and in a lot of instances, it's a lot of varied different things. And in some cases they're in direct violation of federal law, of state law. And so Exhibit H is in a way causing a little bit of a bottleneck in our system. So one thing that we are hoping, especially going into a new iteration of a website, is that going forward, everything that goes onto this repository is no less than perfect, because these are legal contracts, and stuff in this area goes bad and goes wrong, and things happen, and we want to make sure that you have recourse. And I know in some instances recently, some folks may have been using products that they didn't officially have DPAs for, and that can present some problems. So going forward, we want to make sure that everything that is currently in the registry has fidelity, and that everything going into the registry going forward does as well. So part of that is going to be me, going through and cleaning up a lot of the agreements that are in there that are bad, that maybe weren't audited properly in the way that we had it set up in the past. And I would actually like to encourage a lot of folks. I know that we like the fact that the DPA version 2, if you're familiar with that version, does not come with the expiration date. However, it's causing problems in how other folks are able to add products, because a lot of those have been expired or the expiration dates vary. And so it becomes very hard for us as a group to utilize those old agreements. And if someone wants to use them now, that means that they're not necessarily available to anybody else because they're not subscribable. And if I'm speaking in, Klingon, please let me know. But what we're hoping for is fidelity. And if that means that we need to do some more professional development and just really go back to, like I said, that we did in the fall conferences in years past, where we heard that maybe we want to do like a back to basics. I think that my hope would be in January, maybe that's what we'll do, is just start out with like a what are we doing here? What is the purpose of all of this? And start with the fundamentals of really what we are looking at and why it's important and what happens if that little provision or nuance goes wrong, and why we should value it. So I think that that's a little seed I want to plant in your head, because I know Nicole, who's joining us, known as iPhone in the chat, wanted to have a conversation about this. But what is the purpose of these meetings? How can we make SDPC work for you? How can we make SDPC as it exists now work for all of us? That's really something that I think, now that we've got a lot of this compliance review stuff, hopefully we can work together as a team to clean this thing up so that when we're ready to kick off this new product, which everything I've heard, everything that I've seen as far as models and prototypes, like, it's just going to make this whole process just, like, the fact that it's as difficult as it is kind of, it's just going to be super, super slick. So the more you guys can be a part of this conversation, the more you have a level of fluency in this data privacy space, the easier it is for us as a state to continue the momentum that we have as being like one of the front runners in the country when it comes to the work that we do. We'll be talking in April in Miami about the work that we do nationally with some of the other states. And so I want that to be a reflection on the work that all of you do, because our practices, sometimes arduous, sometimes kind of convoluted, are still much better and more progressive than what is happening in other states. And you should all feel very proud and fulfilled at all of the work that you did in getting to this very first little piece, this compliance review and reflection. So, Nicole, I don't know if you're able to speak to this. I know that we have a lot of those that have been submitted. I know that there are some folks that are in the process of getting them submitted. But if you would like to talk about the compliance review and what you felt about it, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you're confused, if you thought it was a worthwhile expedition, we can talk about that. We can go back and talk about our student privacy fall training. We did not record it. Well, we did record it. And then in reviewing it, we felt like it was best to kind of keep some of the content that was spoken in public confidential. So what we wanted to do is we're going to create some screencasts of those presentations so that you'll have access to them. But what we do have now, if you do have, and I will paste it in the chatty chat again. That's Alex's email. That's not the right one. So I hit Windows V. Oh my gosh, it brings up my whole Windows V. I'm telling you guys, it is the trick of all tricks. So you can access these links. If you did attend and you're in one of my sessions that did not show you the survey, because I apologize, you can hit that link right there and give us some more feedback about our fall training. That we would love to know, and maybe you can give us some qualitative feedback here while we're all together. And, brag about all the things that these folks that didn't go missed out on. Like my breakout, right, Troy? That was fun. And then any questions that you have about DPA stuff floating out there, your EISP programs, anybody that's still got something lurking with PikaPack? I know that one of our LEAs has actually dipped their toes in this realm recently, and if he wants to speak to anything that he's learned so far, he's welcome to. I don't know how deep you've gotten into the weeds with this, but to remind a lot of you, this is the NRDPA, so this is not for like an ed tech product or third party in that way. This is for a researcher, so maybe you know, you work with Weber State or Utah State or the University of Utah or Westminster, any one of the universities or higher education places in our area, this would apply to you. And if you'd like to talk more about that, we can. And then the last little seed that I'd like to plant in your brains is this idea of disposition of data. This is something that we didn't necessarily talk about a lot in the past, but what we're learning is that we may have data privacy agreements with apps, you know, going back to 2019, and that's great. But you may have had relationships with these products for who knows. I talked to a charter school the other day that started in 2008, and they said, "Oh yeah, we've been using Skyward since 2008." And I was like, "Oh, well, do you think that a senior in 2008 who's probably 33 years old right now, do you think that their data has been deleted?" And we both kind of stopped for a minute and thought, oh wait, I wonder if it has been. So unfortunately, if something were to have happened to that data, that person would have to potentially, you know, have to find that 33-year-old. So that's something that maybe you want to talk about too. Have you disposed of data? Have you asked these vendors to get rid of stuff that they shouldn't have anymore? What has your experience been with that? I know in talking to some of you in passing that you feel like vendors sometimes want to push back on you with that and not be super compliant. But yeah, these are things that we can talk about. And then the last slide that I have here is just all these resources and links that you can take a look at in your leisure time. So would anybody like to open up the floor and talk about something?
I just have a quick question, John.
Yes, sir.
I was a few minutes late, and so I didn't hear if it's something you already covered, so I apologize if that's the case. But February 9th, there's that thing that was posted by Whitney, and it has a data privacy 101 thing in it. Are you guys doing that, or is that something she's doing?
That is hers. Katie, do you have more specific information on Whitney's? Remember, I know Nicole has some of that too. I've seen the invite. Go ahead, Katie.
Oh, I just was gonna say that I don't have any additional information.
No. So maybe that's what was being referred to, and if that is something that you know, FERPA applies to us. So yeah, that's something that we would support for sure. That is not something that we are directly involved in as of yet, but you know, we could always be asked to do something.
Don, I guess I will just say, my guess is that they're not going to get into like FERPA or student data privacy laws because they know that, you know, like there's already trainings that exist for that. Part of their role is sort of teaching other agencies to be privacy conscious because not everyone has privacy laws like education does. So other government agencies might not even like have privacy on the brain. So I guess they're probably not going to talk about education specific privacy in that training, but I could be wrong.
Thanks for the question, Troy. Okay, let's do this. What is the point of these meetings? What do you guys want from us in a monthly conversation? I know that different times of the year, we talk about different things, especially at the beginning of the year. But I would like to say, you know, that our umbrella covers data managers, which a lot of you are. It covers information security officers, which a lot of you may also be. It covers appointed records officers, which some of you may or may not be. And if you are one of those three, hopefully you know who the other two people in your agency are so that you can work in tandem in this ecosystem so that we can build strong infrastructures of privacy so that what we do every month hopefully has value and we're all working towards a goal of, I don't know. Any suggestions would be helpful. Data retention, AI, and something else. Oh, in the agenda. I changed. That was last month's. Oh, that's Whitney's. Okay, thanks. So Nicole put in the chat a lot of the information regarding the state's training that they are doing in February.
John, did you see Whitney's comment as well about the EISP?
Oh, Amira. Okay. We can take a look at the status of Amira because I know that was one that the other LEAs were using. Okay, Corey Little says he likes to hear what others are facing, especially new problems. So, like, what would be a problem? What's a suggestion of like a problem that you deal with? I mean, we our audience here, the folks that are in this space, are in gigantic school districts that have tens of thousands of students. There are folks in here that maybe, if you're on the small end, like put in the chat how few students you have, or how few faculty you have, or how many students you have. Like, what is the scale and size of the folks that we have in this space so that we know, like, maybe we, it sounds silly and this is all off the cuff, but what if we have like some sort of speed dating time where like we put you in like a cohort of other LEAs that are of like the same size and scale as you, and so you can have conversations about things that work for you. Maybe something that works for a school of like Kendra's 1,500 won't work for Corey's 36,000. I don't know. I'm interested in ways. Yeah, nice little emoji popped up there in the chat. Like, I'm interested in ways of maturing the conversation that you guys are having in a way that, like, if we can get to a point to where everything that you just submitted, metadata dictionary and annual privacy notices and justifications and on, if all that stuff is just like green, then we have an opportunity to kind of pivot and do some really cool stuff, in regards to supporting your staff and supporting the kids. And, they're, in the thing it talked about AI, we've talked about Chat GPT, but I saw an article the other day where there's and this shouldn't be surprising, but like that there's software that has the ability to look at you while you're sitting at your computer and determine what kind of emotions or what you're just the little nuances of your face. And so what happens if that all of a sudden wants to come to my kid's Chromebook? That's a very interesting conversation that we can be having. So are you interested in some of that futurology, singularity kind of conversation? What kinds of things can we do to support the work that you do? And I'm going to give you 30 seconds of awkward silence while I drink my coffee. You're killing my soul. You guys don't want anything more. All right. Well, if that's that, if anybody has any questions about anything that we've discussed, we can continue to stay on and talk. You can.
Wait, John, can I
Oh, yeah,
interrupt?
go ahead,
Sorry.
Katie.
So
Yes.
for clarity, are you asking the group what they would like to get out of these meetings going forward?
Yes,
Okay, so yeah,
regarding,
just,
you know,
and I
yeah.
would say, I would be interested to know what the group, so you had kind of pitched the idea of what could we do differently, but I'm also curious, like what the group has found useful so far. So
Oh,
like, is
yeah,
there
that's a great
anything
perspective.
that these guys should continue doing that you find helpful? Oh, there's some stuff coming in.
Uh-oh. Yes, why does your work matter? Okay. Whitney, is that something that you experience more often than not, or just in this Amira situation?
You talking to me?
Or, well, no, Whitney put in there, routes LEAs have taken when company refuses a DPA.
Yeah, I'd like to know that too.
Yeah, so I've had a few just flat out be like, nope, not gonna do it, or just no response whatsoever, but yet it's something that we use a lot, or even one that maybe they have their own version of a DPA, but it's a little sketchy as far as our laws, but it's something that,
They won't budge on.
yeah, and we're totally invested in using.
Right.
So it gets a little tricky. Like right now we're trying to figure out our game plan for Traversa 360, I think it is, for transportation and tracking kids on buses.
Uh-huh.
And you guys sent back, like what was sketchy with the laws. And so I'm just kind of like, okay, now what?
Well, and that's wild because my son, like I use an app like that too. So it's interesting that like I see it from the parent perspective too. It's
Right. And it's a
kind of
useful
wild, yeah.
tool, but
Right.
their data handling is a little sketch.
Huh. I mean, I guess like I mean, I don't know. I guess it goes back to like where you are in like the procurement process. Like, is it something that you're already paying for and you've already installed and like
Yep,
you're
it's been in
teaching
use for
everybody how to do? It can't be like, okay, well, let's switch to here comes the bus or something.
Yeah, it's been in use for years. There's a contract. The contract has zero mention of data, and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So what specifically do they have problems with? Because I've had to focus heavily on those areas, and sometimes there's some misunderstandings and you can overcome those, but
Gosh, I'll have to bring up the email that John and Nicole sent me because it's a laundry list for them. Like they don't spell out disposition of data. It's a big one.
Nicole gets all the credit for those emails. Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like I was saying, is that those exhibit H's have been coming back like tenfold. And I'm just wondering, like, you know, if because in some ways I've seen some uh vendors be much more cooperative because of the DPA. They have adopted it themselves as a model that they want to push out as their own proprietary, version. But
Yeah, and in
it's
Traverse's
like now there's
DPA,
the
there's
members, right?
9 issues.
How about things like Google products not in the core package?
Yeah.
Is the core package like YouTube and the Drive stuff?
Yeah, I don't think YouTube's included, but Drive and
Okay.
Docs and things like that. But what about all the other Google things?
Huh.
Google Santa Tracker. I mean, that's not a core thing, but it's in heavy use. Things like that.
Right.
we
Uh,
ran into hundreds, if not thousands of those. A lot of them are really good, actually. There was a Google, it was called Google Training for Chromebook navigation, and we had teachers that were using that in their class when they had free time to help kids that were new to Chromebooks use Chromebooks. But it also had links embedded in it that would resolve to third-party links that were not the best. And so even though it had Google's name on it, that was simply Google saying that we'll allow that app to be referenced in the Google Store. But with this latest lockdown, most of those we had to say goodbye to because they just they weren't willing to do what was necessary to be compliant. And so, like some of them that you're talking about might not really be Google. It might just be the fact that Google allowed it to be downloaded from the store.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, it's that, like, you know, and from the user point of SDPC, like I don't know how the procurement piece works in different LEAs. I know that a lot of you have different systems. I know that, like, you know, some of you that use, and correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, those of you that use Learn Platform, teachers aren't able to use anything that hasn't been okayed in that. Is that correct?
That's not, it's just a listing.
So it's just a listing. It's not the ability to turn stuff on or off.
Well, we do have that ability, but we haven't used it yet.
Okay. Huh.
And it isn't products that we buy or that we have a contract with. It's products that are free on the
Right.
web. We
Right.
sign up for, students do.
Yeah, I'll bet you we had over 1,000 of those that we just had to let fall by the wayside because we knew we were not going to be able to get agreements for, and we'd already talked this over with teachers and just said this is part of the process of getting smarter with this. And it took some time, but we went from close to 2,000 of those down to about 300 that were really important and mattered, and all the others just kind of fell away.
What were some unintended consequences of that in the good sense, I guess, Troy, of like reducing that down?
Well, it gives us a true list of what's important and what we need to be striving for over on SDPC to get agreements with or to subscribe to those. There's always been this problem that we had 150 to 170 approved through an NDPA, but hundreds of others that were in use. And like I said, we were close to about 2,000. And just trying to get our arms around that was just going to be impossible. So it actually worked in our favor to be able to go back to the teachers and say, this is going to be happening. And we controlled that. We didn't give too much time ahead to let there be a lot of review and consideration. It was like you have 1 week to explain why this is something you need to have, and most of them realized it wasn't worth going after, and they could find other solutions other ways, and we ended up with being able to trim that down to just a few hundred, and now I know what I need to work on to get data privacy agreements or some approval on or parental consent, the different options.
Right. Well, is there like I don't know, is there like like some sort of like weight of liability of like, oh my gosh, I went from like 2,000 unchecked, unlocked doors to 300, or I mean, I don't know, is that the case? Like,
Are you asking, is that what
yeah, you like,
for us?
yeah, well, yeah,
we didn't for that week leading up to it, when we said, go out and check this list, I posted the list, everything that was approved, everything that wasn't, and the stuff that wasn't was going to be kicked off if they didn't come back and come up with an education reason why that was something they absolutely had to have. Because we could find numerous of the same app just from a different vendor. And so part of this is trying to standardize things as well so that we don't have to deal with 10 different typing programs. We can have 2, And so it's also helped cut that down. And I think there was a lot of anxiety to begin with, a lot of concern that there was going to be a fallout from that. And really there wasn't. I would say maybe for the week after there was, and then that's gone away. And we've been largely able to now consolidate in a great way the apps that are approved for use, to where now if we approve one in elementary, we don't just approve it for a grade or a school like we used to. We approve it for um, multiple elementaries, and we say, this is your solution for that. And we give them 2 choices and not 10.
Huh. So it's a little bit more prescriptive.
Yeah.
That's great. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you so much. We do have,
John,
oh, go
this
ahead.
is Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hi. So Kendra said something earlier in the chat about, she said the conversations on Pika Pack were super helpful. I was just curious to know what about those conversations, Kendra, did you find helpful? Was it that we were notifying you that they needed a DPA? What kind of stuff?
She's like, I'm out of here.
I really shouldn't have put her on the spot to try to respond to that right now. But I am curious if Kendra, if you get a chance, I'm curious to know what more about that.
She's in Moab right now. Do you know how nice it is there right now at that? It's not like murky like it is in Salt Lake City. Well, if anybody has any suggestions on like I say, SDPC, like it would be easier to just do all the signing of the contracts on an interface there, and et cetera, things like that. Let me know. We can turn that stuff around and make it happen. Otherwise, we're gonna go into a little bit of a hole for the next couple of weeks and start reviewing all of your metadata dictionary information. We'll be reaching out to you if we have any questions or any sort of corrections or updates that we would like to help you make. Our goal is to have 156 LEAs with comprehensive metadata dictionaries, green reports that you can put on your website, share with your board, and be privacy proud by the beginning of 2024. That's the goal. So thanks for all the work that you've done so far this year with us. I don't know if anybody else on the team has anything that they'd like to say, but otherwise I will see you all on the last Thursday of January 2024.